Today's To Your Wellbeing focuses on a really heavy topic, but it's one that we need to continue to talk about because suicide can impact anyone at any age, and we all have a role in playing in preventing. So it starts with awareness and education, which is why for the next 15 minutes, we are going to be discussing the warning signs with Dr. Jenna Mendelson, a clinical psychologist at LeBauer Behavioral Medicine with Cone Health. All right, so Dr. Mendelson, first and foremost, of course, thank you for sharing your time and your expertise. What kind of warning signs do all of us need to be aware of?
Well, unfortunately, really anybody can commit suicide. There's no clear way to predict. There are some risk factors that we do know. Historically, suicide has been more common among adult males over the age of 65. Unfortunately, that number seems to be moving lower and lower in more recent years, especially since COVID. And suicide is now actually the second leading cause of death among people aged 15 to 24. So really, it can affect anybody of any age. It's found to be more common among males. People who have a history of substance use are at higher risk for completed suicides, as well as mental illness and actually impulsivity. Tragically, suicide is often something a person's been thinking about a while, but actually an impulsive in the moment act to actually go through with it. So impulsivity is associated with completed suicides.
And a lot of people experience depression, which can often lead to that. So how would someone know if it's gotten to that point that their loved one, their family member, their coworker is considering suicide?
Unfortunately, many, maybe most people keep these kinds of thoughts to themselves. So it's often really subtle and really hard to know the signs, especially when you add in the fact that many completed suicides are kind of an in the moment decision. That being said, there are some behavioral red flags to look out for. If a person says they want to kill themselves, it's really important to take that seriously. Often people kind of misconstrue that as being attention seeking, but these kinds of statements are rarely attention seeking, and it's always important to take them seriously. Sometimes people won't quite come out and say that they are having thoughts of killing themselves, but they do say these more kind of passive things like, well, I won't be a problem much longer, or if anything happens to me, I just want you to know. And they kind of tell you things, or they want to make plans for after they pass away. And often those kind of comments might seem out of the blue. Somebody giving away favorite possessions, making plans for pets, throwing out belongings that you know are important to them, that's a very big red flag. And sometimes when somebody abruptly becomes cheerful after a prolonged period of depression, that can be a red flag for suicidality. It can be that the person has finally kind of committed to the decision to commit suicide, and they're feeling a sense of relief that they won't be suffering for much longer. Or there are some instances where a person maybe does start to feel a little better, but it's just better enough that they have the motivation to act on plans that they may have been having. So kind of abrupt cheerfulness can unfortunately be a red flag. Somebody writing a suicide note can, of course, be a pretty significant red flag. If someone is writing things like that, it's important to take it seriously. And somebody expressing kind of bizarre thoughts about, different conspiracies that are happening and things they fear might happen to them, might be having a kind of a break where they could be at higher risk for suicide.
All right, so there's a whole gamut of different things there to be aware of, and we really do need to be aware. Sometimes we pass by people or have conversations with people, and later we think to ourselves, I wonder if something was going on there and I just wasn't keying into it because I wasn't focused or paying attention, which makes me think about warning signs and if they're different, like for children or teenagers, especially when you were talking about how sometimes it's an impulse thing, and I think of children and teenagers that way. Are there different warning signs that parents need to watch out for?
It's many of the overlapping warning signs, but they manifest differently based on developmental level. Children who are being bullied, if you're aware of bullying that's going on, that can be a predictor for suicidality, having suicidal thoughts. Often children feel like there's no escape, and so they resort to thinking about suicide. Talking about death or dying, drawing or writing stories about death or dying, those can be red flags. Thinking about things happening to their loved ones after they die, that can be a red flag too.
All right, so, and I think to myself, if you saw your kid was writing something like that or drawing those pictures, you'd want to approach them. Is there a certain way? How do you approach them when that happens?
Often, parents are afraid about asking children outright if they've had thoughts about killing themselves. There can be a fear that saying that can give them the idea. And one thing that we know for sure, there's been a lot of research on this, is that directly asking someone if they are having thoughts of taking their own life does not increase the thoughts of it or the risk that they might start thinking of it. So if you are concerned about your child, I would first ask in an open-ended way and kind of see what they say, and they might come out and tell you. But if you're really concerned that your child or adolescent might be having thoughts of suicide, go ahead and ask them. Have they had thoughts of hurting themselves or even killing themselves?
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, but we are coming back. We're going to answer more of that, especially like then how do you maybe have that same conversation with an adult? That might be a little bit different. We're going to talk about that and much more when we come back.